Expertise, qualifications, experience. When I am questioning an expert witness, it is extremely important to understand what brought that expert to this exact date. How are they qualified to render the kind of expert opinion that they are rendering today? What kind of training did they receive? What kind of qualifications do they have? What kind of experience do they have in that particular area that would give a judge or someone else deciding that kind of resolution whether or not a person has sufficient expertise to testify about a particular subject? Sometimes expert witnesses can testify as an expert not because they went to school and got a PhD in that area, but because they have so much experience in a particular area that it is reasonable for them to assume that they can give expert testimony that aid the jury in understanding a case or a theory or how a theory applies to a set of facts. More conventionally, we look to qualifications, specific training, the kind of expertise that is derived from what we fundamentally understand as teaching. That is, what kind of schooling did you secure that would enable you to be considered an expert in the specific area that you're testifying to? Not generally, but specifically. Now, as part of that discussion, I'm obviously going to ask about general training, but I'm giving you that question so that you understand that ultimately it's a question of whether that expert has the training, qualifications, expertise, experience in that particular limited area of science in which they're testifying to, of expertise in which they're testifying to, that it can be fair to say that they would aid the jury in a way that is meaningful. So, I want to ask questions in this category about how they came to secure that education, those qualifications, those experience that gives them the right to say, I am an expert. How do I do that? Well, consistent with our questioning techniques, I want to ask them what kind of experience they got. Would you please tell me your educational background? And they go through high school, college, postgraduate, whatever. Or, where did you go to high school? Or, if I have a resume of them, or a curriculum vitae, which is just a fancy Latin word that you can use at cocktail parties or with your friends that really means resume. That gives you that information where you can ask questions about it. But for the purpose of this discussion, we're going to ask them, where did you go to school? Or tell us about your high school education or your college education. Where did you go to college? I might want to know if they went to Harvard or they went to a trade school. I might want to know if they went to MIT, which might be more recognized in a particular area than some other college. It doesn't mean that they can't be qualified. But you as a juror, if you're watching this and saying, what would I believe? If somebody has multiple degrees and has a lot of expertise and commands attention and commands respect by virtue of their schooling, you can imagine that more people like you would listen to them and would believe them. It is not the sole determining factor. But by looking at certain qualifications, that is, what kind of schooling they have, it may help you. There are certain types of schools that have better programs for a particular type of expertise. An engineering expertise, a degree in engineering, might have more value from a school that is well known for developing or graduating engineers than, say, a school that really has a strong following in agriculture, or a strong following in its medical field, or in computer science, you can see that depending upon where they went to school, it may have an impact. When somebody went to school, I want to learn about what they accomplished in school. How does that school experience affect my ability to challenge that witness? Well, I went to Harvard, but I graduated 335 out of 335 people. So, yes, they went to Harvard, but if you were a juror, what would you feel if you found out they graduated last in their class? Would that change your opinion or not? Would it make you feel better about it? Probably not. But the concept is to learn how to gather that information, and then how you evaluate it and use it is up to your strategic determination. But I want to know how they did in school. I want to know why they chose that school. Well, I chose that school because they were the #1 ranked engineering school in the country. Or I chose that school because it was nearby where I lived. Whatever that motive may be, it may yield information which is helpful. Oh, you indicated that you chose the school because it was ranked #1. Where did you derive the information which led you to believe that it was #1? Well, I looked at the College Rankings of America by category. collegerankings.com, whatever that data is. If they said, well, I didn't really look in here, just some of my friends told me, that may be different. I may want to make a note to look and see where that school was ranked in whatever ranking system there is that's recognized in that particular field. Do you see what I'm doing? I'm gathering information. I'm not making assumptions. What kind of honors or awards do you receive in college, in postgraduate, wherever they're talking about they went to school at that point? They may say none. They may say, well, I was the head of the Honor Society, or I was the president of the engineering club, or I received the Special President's Award for Engineering Excellence. Okay? I don't care what he or she says. I want to know what they say. I want to learn. If they say something, I don't want to skip over it. Oh, you won the President's Award for Engineering Excellence? What is that? And before I answer, you may think, is that something that's phenomenal? That sets them apart? Or is that something that a bunch of people won? That may or may not set them apart? Well, listen to the answer. Well, I was one of 76 students that received the award. Wow, you didn't expect to hear that. Or I was the only one to receive that award. That's for the highest grade in the class. That's not for the highest grade for the whole curriculum. In other words, depending on what they say, I may explore further. What's for the highest grade in the class? Like in law school, the fun talk about, people who do well is when you get the highest grade, the old-fashioned way was to give you a book, a treatise on that subject. For example, contracts. If you got the highest grade in contracts, you got a contracts treatise. So they would say, call that the book award. Did you book that class? Did you get a book award? So if I had an attorney as an expert, and I found out they got book awards, that would tell me they got the #1 score in each of those classes. So that would be beneficial. That if I told you that I won book awards in law school, which I did, would that change your opinion about thinking about how intelligent I might or might not be? The key to understand is not whether or not you make assumptions, but what is the typical type of response that somebody would have to that information. That's why it's important, and that's why you want to know and exhaust all that area. Okay, the person told you they chose this school. What kind of degree did you receive? I received a BS in. I received a BA. I received an AA. Whatever they received, I want to know whether or not that is consistent with their schooling. If somebody says they went to 4 years of schooling, and they only got a 2-year degree, that's important. You might say, I got a degree from a college. If you don't ask, what kind of degree was that? Or what was that degree called? Or how was that degree named? Or what did it say on the piece of paper called the degree that you received? You might skip over a question that might give you information. Well, I got an AA. I got a 2-year degree, even though it was a 4-year program. So it's important to ask those kinds of questions when you're going through this credentialing part. Again, we could go off and talk about many more questions to drill down. I leave that to your discretion, but the concept is to learn that I'm taking baby steps. I'm not making assumptions. I'm making sure I understand the education. After you got your college degree, after you got your engineering degree at the University of Arkansas, what additional schooling did you receive? None. I got a PhD from Georgia. Whatever the answer is, I want to make sure they either say none, in which case now I have ended the schooling questioning, or they say I got an additional degree. I go back and ask my questions. Okay, what was that degree? Or if they say it's a PhD in engineering or in structural engineering, I might say, are there other degrees that you can receive a PhD for as it relates to engineering? Oh yes, there's structural engineering, there's mechanical engineering, there's electrical engineering, or no, everyone receives a PhD in this type of engineering. Because that specialty might be directly related to your particular case. If somebody says, I received an electrical engineering degree, which gives somebody an understanding of electrical systems, versus a structural engineer that might be dealing with the building envelope, the components of a building, then if they're testifying to whether or not a roof failed, you can understand that even though they have a PhD in electrical engineering, it might not be as helpful or as productive as having a structural engineering degree that deals with the structure itself. So you want to make sure you ask those questions that get into that type of understanding their schooling. What other qualifications do they have besides their schooling? Did they get additional training? What additional training did you receive? I went to seminars. I went to certification courses. I got certified in wind engineering, or I got certified in firearms. I got certified in toxicology, or I got a special certification in ballistics examination of firearms, as opposed to machine guns, or whatever the case may be. The concept is to understand what additional training they have. It might be related. It might not. Even if they got additional training, I might be able to use that against them. If somebody has training in a particular area that's not useful, I might say, how is that training useful in your opinion that you're going to render today? Or in your conclusions, I might say it's irrelevant. It's not useful. Well, wonderful. Now you have diluted, you have eliminated their ability to use that as a stepping stone. Yes, they got a degree. Yes, they got a certification. Yes, they did some additional training, but it's not related to this particular expertise. So you can see how I'm asking those questions. It's critically important to do that when you're examining that witness. What other things did they do that would enable them to gather experience? Did they serve an apprenticeship? Were they required to do an internship? Did they serve as an assistant to somebody? What kinds of training did they receive after their schooling that gives you some additional information about their knowledge base or their lack of knowledge base that is different from just going to a course? Well, I worked with the chief engineer at the National Weather Service on X, Y, and Z. And this is a case about the temperature, So I want to know those things because I don't want them to be sprung upon me later. I want to know, okay, what did you learn at that experience? Or I might start with a box. How much time did you spend at that? I was there 1 day, 1 year, 1 month, 5 years. Okay. During that time, did you receive continuous training on whatever they just said? Or during that time, what specific training that you think is related here to this opinion today did you receive there? Whatever the answer, doesn't matter. Then I might go back to the questioning of, okay, how does that expertise help you? How does that enable you to give a better opinion, a more experienced, a more informed opinion than what you had before? I don't want to make assumptions. I want to learn from them. They might say none. They might say a whole lot. It doesn't matter. Maybe the explanation they give you isn't believable to you and won't be believable to a jury. The important thing is to exhaust that, so I'm understanding what kinds of qualifications, what is in addition to their schooling did they receive, in addition to those seminars or certifications that they received. That sort of segues nicely into this experience component. I've been looking at firearms for 25 years. I've been looking at photographs of blood for 25 years. I have been a general contractor fixing these exact types of problems. I have been an accident reconstruction expert, or even though I wasn't an accident reconstruction expert certified by so-and-so, I actually performed these 1,000 times, 300 times by being hired by clients in a different capacity. You see, what I want to learn is what kind of experience do they have. I want to know, where did they learn beyond just schooling, academia, certification courses, training? Where did they learn? They're on the job. Have they seen this situation live before? How often? How many cases are exactly like this one? If they say, what do you mean by exactly? You ask them, how would you define exactly? What kind of cases have you experienced that you have actually conducted accident reconstructions, or the determination of how much distance it took for that car to stop, where the car was doing in excess of 60 miles an hour? Oh, well, that's easy, Mr. Major. 27. 270. Well, none. But I did 1,000 of them with 30 miles an hour and under. And the math is the same. I don't care what the answer. I'm getting that information. I'm learning that experience or on-the-job training. I want to go through that analysis. Even though they may say they have no schooling, or they have no licenses, or they have no training. Because I want to find out all of these categories. Okay, how much experience do they have? What specific things did they do? I'm learning that by asking first generally what kind of experience they believe they have, and then squeezing it down, narrowing it into my specific fact pattern, so I can learn what that person has done. So I can learn exactly how much specific knowledge about this kind of fact pattern that they are rendering a conclusion on. So it's important to understand that. I might want to know what kinds of honors or awards they received after school. In other words, I know you won the President's Excellence Award, but are you the president of the toxicology department at University of Florida? Were you the president of the Physicians Association? Were you the president of the cancer physicians? Were you the lead or chairperson of the Computer Science Association, or the largest organization that you view as being accepted, as the recognized organization for that particular expertise? I want to know, do they look at those kinds of things in evaluating their expertise? So if I learn about that, I can learn how involved they are or were. So as you can see, what I'm doing is I'm assessing what kind of experience they have. I might even want to know whether or not they have ever been sanctioned. Have they ever had a complaint filed against them? By who? How many? Where would I find that information? Who is the body that licenses you? Who are all of the bodies that license you? What specifically would I look for if I were trying to find out about whether or not you secured any sanction against you, or whether you secured any acquittal of any sanction? I want to learn about that, because whether or not it's admissible at a trial, it's certainly something that may go to bias, that may go to their qualifications, that may be useful later. Have you ever been excluded as a witness? Have you ever been denied certification? How many times have you had a situation where a court did not accept you as an expert? I want to go through each one of them. I want to get as much information about each one of them. I want to learn why they were not certified. What was it that the judge said or opposing counsel asked or they believed was the reason why they weren't certified? How many times were they certified? In what specific areas were they certified? Generically, firearms experience, but in those cases where they certified, none of them involved machine guns? Okay, and this is a machine gun case? None of them involved knives, but they were certified in some sort of field that's close to that. So don't assume because somebody was certified as an expert, it means they were certified in the exact area you want. So you want to learn that information because there may be a way to use that information either favorably to you, or you may be able to use that information to attack them, or you may be able to use that information to learn other things. You want to know from that expert also who or what they consider authoritative. What does that mean? That means every science, every expertise has to have a benchmark, has to have an underlying methodology that supports the science. The idea that 2 + 2 = 4 and it will equal 4 all the time. Okay, the idea that an electrical charge moves in a certain direction. The idea that when you slam on the brakes and it creates a stopping of the vehicle, how that rubber displacement on the pavement can be scientifically computed in a way that will give you an analysis of how fast they were going, or when they slammed on the brakes, or how they entered that intersection. There is always something that taught somebody something. There is a book, there is a professor, there are recognized materials that one could consider authoritative, because if you think about it from a common sense point of view, it has to be founded, an expertise has to be founded on some sort of underlying methodology. In many courts, they actually require you to establish a sufficient scientific basis, that this kind of science is recognized, that this kind of expertise is the type of expertise which is recognized by some body, by some organization, by something which gives it veracity, gives it validity, such that it would be reasonable to have you testify as an expert in that particular field. They generally can't say no one or nothing. If they do, you can see how that really doesn't sell well. So I want to find out, what do they consider authoritative? Hey, these set of standards I consider authoritative. These are the standards that we use when conducting this kind of surgery. This has been accepted by the medical technology. There is a book that is put out, that is taught by, or produced by, or circulated to all the law schools, that is used as the critical book when examining how to perform this surgical procedure. Okay? There is a book which explains how to conduct this kind of autopsy. There is a set of articles. There is a recognized authoritative source. There is someone who is the father of that particular, or the mother of that particular area. I want that witness to tell me. If they say no one's authoritative, I'm not sure that that sells well. So you want to ask those questions. You want to know. Again, I don't care who they're relying on, but you might find that who they're relying on may have said something contrary to what they're espousing. Or maybe there's a set of articles that was written by the same person, or the same school, or the same body, organization, that may be either contradictory or may confirm, may show you that this is good science, that what they're saying is something good that's going to be tough for me to attack. Again, it doesn't matter what they say, what matters is that they say it. And whatever answer you get will give you an incredible amount of detail in that area. So you can understand how we have gone through some of the qualifications, expertise, training, experience that gives you a framework for attacking or understanding that area. Again, in other sessions, we can talk about it in more detail, but this will give you a launching pad to ask more questions, to get a comprehensive understanding of exactly how and why they may be qualified. Another area to question that expert on, to understand where they fit within that qualifications world, is to ascertain, are they published? Have they been recognized by somebody as an expert? How many articles were written by them? How many were accepted by an acceptable or the top journal, the American Journal of Medicine, or whatever that particular recognized, source that body, that organization, that specialty looks to? Did they create some of the standards, that the building code standards, the scientific standards that are actually used? I want to understand what they have written and what they haven't written, what they have done and what they haven't done, where they have served and where they haven't served, because that is also a critical component of understanding how scholarly, how much expertise, how believable they will be. You may find that they've written articles, but nothing on this topic. Well, usually people write on something they're either very good at or something they like. If they're not writing on this subject, it might be helpful to you to use that later on, or it might tell you something about where their real focus is. The concept is to understand that information and to gather it. And then you can use it successfully in whatever way you deem appropriate in the case.